All right, we're going to get going here. I'm just going to share my screen. This program will be at least an hour for us to get through everything. I know there's a question in the chat about how long this will be. Just give me one more second here. Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Thomas O'Sullivan. I'm the Director of College Counseling here at Fordham Prep, and you are here for tonight's Junior College Kickoff. The College Counseling Department consists of 2 college counselors, as well as myself, Mrs. Erica Keogh, who is with us tonight, and Mr. Kenneth Tejeda, class of 07, who is also with us this evening. Also, an important part of our department is Mrs. Carol Isbell. She's our administrative assistant, but she is also our SSD coordinator. I just want to touch on that real fast. If you do get extended time or are seeking extended time services on the SAT and or the ACT, it's really important that you reach out to Mrs. Isabel to ensure that that information is communicated to both the College Board and ACT student. A lot of times there's some confusion about that. So if you do get extended services and are looking to use extended time on the official SAT or ACT, please make sure that you have communicated with Mrs. Isabel regarding that process. But we're just going to kick things off. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tejeda, and we are going to get going. So welcome.
Good evening, everyone. So for my part, I'll be covering a basic timeline and then the role of the college counselor and the role of the family and the student. So first, the timeline. This is a very basic frame of dates. There's a lot more that goes in within these dates, but the first round is January through July. It's a lot of test prep, and testing that test prep isn't necessarily always going to be a Kaplan or Princeton review, but it's focusing on the courses that your child is taking right now, because a lot of the courses they're taking are going to prep them for the English sections, the math sections, the science sections, and the ACT or SAT. Following that will be between August and October. This is when they'll finalize their college list. So within that time frame, and before that as well, we'll include touring colleges, doing some college visits, doing research on colleges, and just finalizing that list, anywhere from 8 to 10 schools. We'll get into a little bit more about that in a little bit. And then once we're rolling next year, when they're seniors in their fall semester, we'll be applying, right? Applying through Common App, either directly through some websites or a CUNY, their own website, their own application. So it's going to vary. We'll be guiding your child through that and requesting transcripts that tells us that the student is officially applying to that school. So that's also another important piece that we'll be covering today. In between those dates of September and December, there's October. October 1st is when FAFSA and the CSS profile open. These are the official applications to apply for grants and loans from the federal government, as well as from the institutions that you're applying to. So October 1st is an important date to make note of for October 2022. And then fast forward into the spring of 2023, once those acceptances start to come in, most of the deadlines will be, and deposit deadlines will be May 1st of 2023. Next slide, please. So I mentioned, again, that timeline is a big picture. There's a lot that goes into that, and we'll continue to cover some of those specific details. But in our role as college counselors and supporting your child and your family, what do we do? What, especially at Fordham Prep? Well, we're here to guide you and advise you. If it were up to us, we'd be accepting everyone at every school, but that's on the other end. That's the admissions counselors. But our job is to guide you and to advise you to what would be the best options and how to best present yourself, your narrative as a student, and to be as competitive as possible in this process. We will say in some ways we are the experts in different parts of this. So we help navigate as best as possible with all the different types of schools that students will be applying to, either it be a private school in New York or a private school in California. We'll have the knowledge. And one of the big things about our department is that we collaborate together. If I don't know something, I'm going to Mr. O'Sullivan. And if he doesn't know, I'm going to Ms. Keogh. We work together in this process. It's not just the one counselor for the one student. It's actually the three of us for that entire student body, for the entire cohort. So it's a big collaboration that we do when it comes to this. Important piece is that, yes, we will be meeting with the family and the parents, but most of our time will be spent with the student, creating their narratives, with their essays, with their activity sections, just making sure that they're presenting themselves really well within this process. And if our doors open, please come in, come visit, please come speak to us. We're here for you. Next slide. Some of the specifics, as I've mentioned, is just that narrative of making sure that we're telling a good story about the student. And especially with COVID and the time that we've experienced within the past year and a half, almost 2 years, is what was that impact on the student, on your family? We want to make sure that if that has been an impact, that it's told, and it's told clearly and well, and that the admissions counselors understand that. Coming up in this spring, we do group guidance classes. So junior guidance specifically, we'll be working together to create the Common App accounts. We'll be helping with interview techniques, supporting with the college essay, beginning the college research, and utilizing different programs and data and scattergrams to decide what the lists are going to be. And also making sure that students are signing up for tests and that they're scheduling themselves and organized for when those tests come up. And then in the fall, once they enter their senior year, it's a lot of that one-on-one work, even in small groups in the group guidance classes, to complete the college applications, reviewing essays one-on-one, and just beginning to submit these applications. So a lot of one-on-one work will be happening in the spring and in the fall, but a lot more in the fall. As well, we'll be writing a recommendation letter for every single student that's in our cohort. We've officially separated the cohort into the 3 college counselors. So you'll find out soon which college counselor will be representing your student and working with your student. And most important, we advocate for every child on behalf of the student to colleges if we need to, if we have that connection with a school. If the student is struggling in school and we need to collaborate with the teacher and get some tutoring support, whatever it is for that student, whatever the need is, social, emotional, academic, college process, we're there to support and advocate for that child. Next slide. What's the role of the student? They need to meet with us, and they need to be open and honest and trust us in this process and just tell us their dislikes, their likes, what their ambitions are, what their dreams are, and also be open to what our advice is and what our opinions are as well. As we've been doing this for a long time, and sometimes there's assumptions and thoughts of, yeah, I want this and this is what's going to happen. Sometimes we try to redirect and show them the facts and what the reality is, because there's thousands of colleges, not just in America, in the United States, but across the world. So we want to make sure it's the best fit in the right school for that student. Another responsibility is meet the deadlines. Like, we will be alongside you, but you got to be responsible. And we want the students to be responsible. We know that parents do like to support and make sure that they meet the deadlines as well, but we need to allow them to be independent, because they're about to enter college and they got to be responsible once they're independent and living that journey in college. An important assignment that they will get in the spring is the junior reflection. That is a reflection where They provide us information on their academic successes, maybe some shortcomings and why that happened and what they would have done. Give me 1 second, sorry. All right. And what they would have done differently to improve their academics, as well as just a reflection on who they are as a person. What are some of the things that people would say about them that are positive about them? And what would a teacher say about them? What are the good things of them as a student? Additionally, they will need to request teacher recommendations. Typically, schools will ask from 1 to 2 recommendations. So we'll typically ask the student to request two teacher recommendations. For some colleges, it'll be very specific, junior or senior teacher recommendations from core subjects. Also, students should, if they can, register for some test prep and take their academics seriously, especially in the fall. If they end up applying early, that first quarter grade might be asked to be seen. So they want to make sure they're doing their best all the way through senior year. Next slide. The research process. So again, there's not just 8 schools, there's thousands. So when we do our research, we got to look by region. If the student wants to go to the Northeast, the South, they want to go to another country. These are all things that matter. And we'll be able to pick different attributes and things like, I want a small school. I want to study pre-med. I want to study engineering science, specific majors. And also, is the school diverse? What's the percentage of diversity? What activities, what clubs are offered? Do they have a Frisbee club? Nope, I'm not going there. Okay, we'll find you something else. But we want to boil it down to specific things that the student will want to be able to pick the right list of schools. And how do we go about that? Utilizing us, your college counselors, going onto the different school websites, visiting schools. Something that's a highlight of ours is during the fall, especially this fall, we had close to 145 admissions reps from different colleges. So to be able to interact directly, either be virtual or in person, is a huge asset to be able to get to know the school and meet the person that might actually be reviewing your application. Setting up interviews with the schools and using scattergrams and different data based on our population and how our students have done in their applications. Next slide. College visits. So when you see the terms campus tour or open house, they are actually 2 very different things. Campus tour is a tour. They're walking you through, you're seeing different facilities, the classrooms. You'll probably see students walking around. So you kind of get a feel for the culture of the school. But an open house is when you get to actually meet faculty, staff, students, alumni, you get to interact directly with them. So the open house will be a deeper connection with the school compared to a campus tour. And so schedule a tour, those are amazing. Open houses, please do that. Some schools do focus on demonstrated interest. They do that. They do collect that data when you show up to a school. They might ask you to sign out a little form and they track that. Oh, the student did visit us. So they note that into the application. And then other schools don't do demonstrated interest. So even though you might have visited, you might have done an interview, they're not tracking that demonstrated interest. So it varies by school. And then just some things to be cautious about. If that tour guide that you have isn't very joyful or happy as you're going on that guide, that's just one student. That's not the other thousands of students. That may not be the culture of the school. And also the weather might not be so good when you show up. And again, that's one day, one season. When you go, that campus might be extremely beautiful during the fall and the spring. So just take into consideration that one experience doesn't take into account everything that school may actually have to offer. Now I'll hand it off to Ms. Keogh.
Good evening, everyone. I am Erica Keogh, and I am one of the college counselors. And today I am going to go over some of the terminology that is associated with the actual application process. So what Mr. Tejeda was talking about is all part of the research process. And once a student has a list of schools that they know they're going to apply to, then they'll move into the actual application process. Next slide. So this initial slide is an example of some of the increased applications that some schools saw over the past year. And initially, you may be very surprised, maybe a little shocked that some schools had such a huge increase in applications from one year to the next. And it's true that as they have more applications, the school could become more selective. But one of the good things is that our students in the past year did very, very well in the college application process. So when we look at data like this, or you hear about schools becoming more selective in the media, it's really just to be cautiously optimistic. We want to build a list that's appropriate for your goals and interests, but we need to keep in mind the climate of what is happening out in the world, and schools are getting more challenging, and so we want to make sure that your list is hang on one second, that your list is is going to meet all of your needs, and that you will have lots of options at the end of it. Next slide. Okay, so in this slide, this is a good graphic of the different terms that we use when kids are applying to college. Generally speaking, a college will have an application deadline of, say, like January 1st or January 15th, or maybe it's even February 1st. And that's typically the regular decision process. So a student would have all the full first semester to work on their grades and their applications. And then a decision would be rendered in March or no later than April 1st. And then they would have until May 1st to decide where they were going to enroll. But not every school has the same exact admission plans, and some of them have something called rolling admission, which is more like a first come, first served. So as soon as your application is complete, they'll review it and make a decision and return that decision to you. And that could be something that happens at any point in the school year. That's typically large state schools might have rolling admission plans. And then there are some schools that have an earlier date, which will give you the response back or the decision back earlier than the regular one, and the student will still have until May 1st to make their decision. So early action is like a non-binding plan. So all of those three things, regular decision, rolling admission, and early action, that just means that depending on when you apply, you'll get a response either by April 1st or as soon as possible after you've applied, or by the early action specified date. Now, there are a couple of restrictive application plans. The one that most people have heard of is early decision, which is a binding program. And this is where you say to a college, you're my first choice, and I would definitely attend if you accept me. And then that deadline is usually in November 1st, November 15th, and occasionally December 1st. And those results usually come out within a month to 6 weeks after the application deadline. And of course, then as soon as if you get an affirmative response, then you would be sending your enrollment deposit to that school right away because you have made that commitment. And then there are a very select few schools that have this restrictive early action that says that you can only apply to us early action and no one else. You're not, if we do accept you, you're not bound to attend. You can still apply to other colleges later and make your final decision by May 1st. And this is the most rare. There's only a few schools that have this, but we wanted to make you aware of that it does exist. A couple of examples are Yale and Stanford. Next slide. Some of these items about what colleges look for, we're going to go into more detail in a few minutes, but just generally speaking, of course, colleges are looking for grades and the rigor of your curriculum. We're going to talk a lot about test scores and what test optional means in a few slides, as well as your essay and letters of recommendation, extra quizzes. Those are all going to be really important. But some of the things that are on the right side of the screen are things maybe that you weren't aware of or don't know what they are. So I want to touch on those for a few minutes. So this idea of demonstrated interest, Mr. Tejeda brought it up as well. So this is a concept where a college doesn't want to waste an acceptance on someone who isn't really interested in attending. So how would a college know how interested you are, other than just applying? So the schools that track demonstrated interest are looking to see, have you put in any research that they can track to indicate that you know this is a good school for you and what you are interested in accomplishing. And so they'll be looking to see if you did visit campus, or if you made a contact with their admissions counselors, or if you met with the admissions counselor when they visited Fordham Prep. There are places in their application system where they can check those boxes. And then when they're evaluating your application, if you have done a number of those things, and interviewing would be another thing on that list. If you've done a number of those checks, then they would think that you are more interested in them than maybe other schools. And so that might give you a little bit of an edge in the application process. There are lots of schools that say they do not track demonstrated interest, and I actually think they might be lying about that. When a school says they don't track demonstrated interest, they're trying to be more equitable in the process. But the truth is, when they're reading your application, they're really looking to see if you do know if that school is really going to be a good fit for you based on the things that the school has to offer. So how they would know that would be in supplemental essays. Very often a school will have not just the main college essay, but they might ask you questions about, what is it about our school that, really draws you to us? And so those questions they're really going to look closely at to see just how much you really want to go to that school. Legacy just means you had a parent or grandparent attend that school. Legacy of a sibling is a little less important to colleges, but they will look to see. And again, there are some colleges that will not look at that, but there are some colleges that do. Johns Hopkins is one that comes to mind, where they recently eliminated the legacy interest mark because they wanted to make their admissions more equitable. There are lots of colleges that are interested in improving their diversity on campus. They feel like that is a great way for kids to learn from each other if they have a diverse environment. And diversity is defined broadly here. It's not just about race and ethnicity. It could also be geographic diversity. It could be socioeconomic diversity. So these are all pieces that go into shaping a class at the college. So they are paying attention to those kinds of things. Colleges also care about students who are the first in their family to attend college. And today is actually First Gen Day. Congratulations to all those first generation students. You're making a great important step, and colleges want to support you in that. So they'll be paying attention to that status. And of course, if you have any special talents, whether it is musical or art or athletic, or leadership, those are all things that colleges wanna see from you. And also the ability to pay will be something that plays a role. All right, next slide. So the goals that we think are good goals to have in the college application process is to have a list of about 8 to 10 schools. And you want to have some variety in that list. So when we talk about some of these terms like reach, target, and likely, this is kind of what that means. This slide's going to explain that. So we of course we want children to dream and reach for those dreams. And so if there are schools out there that a student really loves, of course, we would never say no. We'll support you no matter what you want to apply to. But you'll be using some of the scattergrams in our databases to determine, what's the likelihood of being admitted to a particular school. So if you pull up a scattergram of a very selective school, let's say one on the Ivy League, and your grades and scores are well below what they typically accept from students from Fordham Prep, then we're going to put that in the far reach category. On the other hand, there are plenty of schools that take lots of Fordham Prep students. And so when you see a scattergram where your grades and scores are better than most of the kids who have applied, then that's probably going to be more likely. So you're going to want to have some variety in your list, some where we are really confident you'll be admitted, and then some where you're going to, maybe we don't have as many applicants, but you're going to try anyway. And then some in the middle. So that's why you'll have 2 to 3 in the likely category, 2 to 3 in the target, 2 to 3 in the reach, and maybe 1 in the far reach. And that's how you get to 10. Of course, students could apply to more than that. And if you apply some more early decision and get in, you might only apply to 1. But this is like a good goal to have, somewhere in the 8 to 10 range. Next slide. And then this is the different decision types that could result from your application. Of course, everybody wants to get the acceptances, so and we'll have plenty of those. Occasionally, a school needs more time or more information to make a decision. So let's say in the early round, if a student applies early decision or early action, and the school really wants to see the student's first quarter grades, they might then defer their application to the regular round. Sometimes people would confuse this term with deferring college, which is another term. If you're admitted to a college, but you're just not ready to go, or maybe you want to take a gap year or do some service or have a job, then you could defer enrollment. But when we talk about defer in our decision types, it means the college does not have enough information to make a decision, so they're deferring your application to another round. And if you were someone who applied early decision and was saying this was my first choice school and I would definitely go if I got in, when they defer your application, they're releasing you from that agreement. And you'll work with us to talk about the strategy going forward. In some cases, it may mean applying early decision to a different school, or it may just mean writing a letter to the college saying, I know that you've released me from my agreement, but it's still my first choice. Well, we'll work with you on whatever it's going to be. And then, of course, a student could be denied admission if their school really does not feel like the student can be successful or would be successful on their campus. They're not going to put you in a situation where you can't be successful. And that's why they'll give you the deny. And then there are some schools, or there are some cases where a student the school really likes you, but they're going to wait and see how their class shapes up. They're going to send out their acceptances to the people they want in the first time, and then whoever enrolls, if there's still room left over, then they'll go to the wait list to see if they can take you off the wait list. That's another situation where you will work with us to put yourself in the best possible position for admission. Next slide. All right, so I want to get a little bit into what is on the Fordham Prep transcript. All right, this is going to be the biggest part of your application, most important part. So what is on the Fordham Prep transcript, in addition to your name and your address and your birthday, is going to have all of your classes from 9 through 11 and the end of year end of year grade. All right, sometimes people worry, are they going to see my first quarter grade, or are they going to see my exam grades? And none of that is on the transcript. It is only the courses you have taken and the final end of year grade. We calculate an unweighted and a weighted GPA for each year and then cumulatively. So your transcript will have, and I think you can all see this if you were to go into PowerSchool and look at logical transcript, you should be able to see a sample of what your transcript would look like. And I want to make sure everyone's clear that we do not rank. So if a college asks you what is your rank, you do not have one. You say it is not applicable, NA. We don't calculate that. And you should also know that colleges do look at all 4 years of high school. Oftentimes I meet with a student and we talk about 9th grade and they say, well, that colleges don't care about 9th grade. That's absolutely not true. Colleges do care about all 4 years. They will be looking for trends in your transcript. So what does that mean? They are going to look to see, have you challenged yourself? If you did well in your first year, did the next year you try to take some honors classes or an AP? And how did you do in those? If you didn't do well in the beginning, what did you do to change that? And did you show any progress? Right? So they're hoping that you do well in all your classes at all times, but if not, are you at least moving in the right direction? Are you having an upward trend? Colleges are also going to look to see that you challenge yourself in your senior year. So you definitely want to work with us in the spring to build a good senior schedule. That is going to be one that is something that you want to take. We want you to take classes that you'll enjoy, but we'll also put you in a good position for college admissions and show colleges that you're challenging yourself. And they are going to be looking, they may or may not look at your first quarter grades. That is, not all colleges will require that, but if you are having a good fall first quarter, that may be something that we also show to colleges. Also on your transcript, you may not know this, but if you're in the National Honor Society or the Italian National Honor Society or the Chinese National Honor Society, that's listed on your transcript. If you are a National Merit finalist, semifinalist, that'll go on your transcript. If you were in Global Scholars, or if you got Subject Excellence or General Excellence, those are all awards that would be listed on your transcript. What is not on your transcript is discipline. So if you ever got a jug or if you were ever suspended, those things are not listed there. I also want to point out that sometimes students will take classes not in Fordham Prep. Maybe you're a transfer student, or maybe you took an art course through EduSeer, and those things are not included in the GPA. So the only things that we calculate are the grades from Fordham Prep, grades 9 through 11. And as I said before, we will be working with students very closely in the spring to build that good senior course selection. I did see someone ask a question about National Honor Society. So that is something that will come up in the spring. They will use a sort of an internal GPA. And every year I think the GPA changes slightly, but the National Merit Committee will, or not National Merit, excuse me, the National Honor Society Committee will send out applications to the people who they think would make it into the National Honor Society. So that's something that would come later in the year. Next slide. Okay. So when a college gets an application, the first thing they're going to see is an initial transcript, which I said will have the grades 9 through 11 and the courses that you're taking in senior year. Then that your GPA from the end of, or that cumulative GPA 9 through 11 is going to be the official GPA that we use when we're reporting your grades. Your Mid-year grades are the grades that you get after your first semester. And if you are still waiting to hear from colleges at that point, the college will get your mid-year transcript. And then whichever college you enroll in May, that is the school that will get your final high school transcript with the end of year grades for senior year. And it will provide proof that you did in fact graduate from Fordham Prep. And colleges need this. They need this in order to make sure that you have followed through on your responsibilities as a student, and that you've maintained the grades that you said you were going to maintain through your senior year. And this oftentimes can affect your ability to register for classes at college. So that final transcript does end up being really important. And as I said in the last slide, first quarter grades are usually not required for colleges. It kind of depends on if you're going to apply the early decision plan or not. And if you do and the college wants that, that'll be something that we handle for you. It's almost exactly this time next year. I'm starting to talk to seniors about sending first quarter grades right now. So that will be something we discuss in about a year. Okay, standardized testing. So this is something that has changed a lot in the last couple of years. You should know our stance about it. We do want students to prepare and take tests if they can. More and more testing centers are open to students, but we also, and some colleges may continue to be test optional. I'll talk more about test optional later. But we still encourage students to take the test, because if they do have a good test, it can be helpful in the application process. All right. Well, we also don't believe that students need to be in testing prison. All right. So you want to be thoughtful about it. You want to take some time to prepare. And we do have resources and suggestions for tutoring outside of school. And we do have an in-house test prep program called Prepare that we will start up in the spring. So we do want students to do some preparation for it, and we do expect that students take 1, maybe 2 tests in the spring of junior year. Maybe some of you have already done that. Great. If you already have some tests, that's super helpful. If you haven't thought about doing that yet, now's the time to start making a plan. The spring tests are generally March, April, May. March, May, and June for SAT, and April and June for the ACT. And so when we meet to talk one-on-one, we'll go over what we think would be the most appropriate testing plan for you. And then sometimes students will also take an SAT or ACT over the summer or early in their senior year. So that's coming. If you thought that you didn't have to take them because now all schools are test optional, I'm sorry to inform you that we will be expecting you to do it. And there are plenty of resources that you can use to get ready for that. I think everybody has a good idea of what the SAT or the ACT is. If you didn't, the SAT is evidence-based reading and writing and a math test. So this is a breakdown of those tests and how long they take if you're taking it under standard conditions. The ACT is a little bit different because it also has a science section and it still has the optional writing, although I believe that will probably go away at some point. No colleges require writing sections anymore. So much so that the SAT just eliminated it, and the SAT eliminated all subject tests. So this is it. If you're going to take a test, it's going to be the SAT or the ACT, and this is those 2 tests in a nutshell. So test optional just simply means that a school does not require testing in order to make an admissions decision. There are actually some schools that are turning to test blind admissions, where they, even if you had a good score, they're not going to look at it. There's a few of those out there. There's a few of the colleges in Cornell that have are test blind, and the University of California schools are test blind. But if a school is test optional, it simply means that if you have good scores and you want colleges to look at them, if you think that that would enhance your application in some way, then you would send them. There were many colleges that were test optional before COVID happened. So a couple of those are listed there, like Holy Cross or Wake Forest. Those schools were test optional for a very long time before COVID. And then once COVID happened and students were not able to take tests, many more schools went test optional. And that's partly one of the reasons for such big increases in applications. When students finally had that sort of barrier removed, they felt like they could apply to more schools. Now, however, since more and more test centers are going to be opening up, more colleges may turn back to requiring tests. Georgetown is notoriously asking for tests, so I have a feeling they are not going to be test optional in the future. And there are other schools that may also go back to using tests. So again, we're gonna ask that you prepare for that and take those tests. And then if we need them, we'll have them. There is a full list of schools that are test optional right now. It's at the website fairtest.org. That's sort of our watchdog for testing. And the people who run that website they take this very seriously, and so that the lists and the information on that website is accurate. So if you want to know more about which schools are test optional or their policies, specific policies, you can look at that website. Next slide. All right. I've spoken enough for now. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. O'Sullivan, and then I'll be back at the end to help answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Keogh. I just want to address a question that was just in the chat. What is a multi-year assessment? An example would be Fordham University is doing a 3-year assessment of their application process as it relates specifically to testing. So they're going to do a 3-year test optional process and weigh the data against their prior years to see if what they're getting from that portion of the assessment process in the admissions process is something that they should keep, bring back, or continue as test optional. So some schools are doing like a 3-year pilot to see if this is something that they want to bring back into their process. So the application and the supporting materials. Let me just advance the slide here. Okay. So the common application is the most common, for lack of better words here. It's accepted by more than 900 colleges. Most of the colleges boys are applying to are on the Common App, but there are others. Many schools will also require a supplement. I know that they were talking about that earlier. So within the Common App, you have all the demographic information, you have information about the parents, you have information about the courses that you're taking, the GPA, the school, the system of the school, but you also have the writing piece of here and the activities. I often talk about the 2 areas where you are the most subjective, but the most honest and the most insight into who you are is through the activities and the writing, because it's not just demographic data. It's you, it's what you've done, and it's your word. So many schools will have the essay that's in there. You have the Common App essay, which I'll talk about in a second, but they'll also require a supplement. It's within the Common App, but it's a separate portion. So that's where you would find it. Students create an account. We'll do this year in counseling class. We will create their common application for next year's process. Just want to touch base on when I say in class. So right now, the juniors are in class with a school counselor. In the 2nd semester, we pick them up. So in the 2nd semester, we will take over that class and we will meet them every cycle. Right now, they're meeting every other cycle, I believe. The 2nd semester is every cycle, and that's with college counseling. And we go over everything. We go over the Common App, we go over the difference between the different types of schools out there, SUNYs, CUNYs, et cetera. And the college essay, we talk about different opportunity programs that are out there. But the Common Application is one of the sessions where we actually sit and create the account. And we'll work with them next year on Common App sessions. So in first semester of senior year, they're still with the college counselor in class. So that in senior year, we are working on the Common App. I think 2 of the first 6 cycles are just slated for Common App sessions. So we will create this account. commonapp.org is the website that we do that. It's important though that they have one account. So don't create an account. We will do it this year because if they create an account, then it just causes a problem later when we're trying to connect account to Naviance, and that's how things get lost when we're trying to submit applications later. So we will take care of that. There are also individual applications. So some colleges want you to use their own application, like Georgetown, for example. CUNY has their own portal, CUNY First. There's the Coalition app, the service academies. So there's a possibility that a student could potentially have 4 different types of applications, if not more, but just between Georgetown, CUNY, Coalition, Service Academy, and the Common Application. So it's important that we just keep that in mind as we start this process, but we will work with them on all aspects of this application because this is their step toward this process is through this application. So the essay and the supplement. We've read many essays this fall, many. And we will continue to read the essays as we continue to shepherd the seniors through this process. And that includes the supplement essay. But what is the essay? The essay is the first time that they have voice in the application. It's the first time that they can use a platform, use an essay, use writing to express who they are. You know, we often tell them that this is where you show the personality behind the application. It's not where you start to, I want to be on SNL and this is my first sketch. This is not where you do that. But this is the first time that you can give voice to who you are. And, you know, there are prompts that they answer, but we will work with them on this process. We will edit. We will break down each one of these prompts in class. And then they have an assignment over the summer where the first day back from class, from summer vacation, they are to give us this essay. And we are to work with them through this process. So the essay, once again, is the opportunity for them to tell us, or to tell the university for that matter, who they are. You know, what am I going to, because again, they're creating a community. They're creating an opportunity for a student to step onto their campus and be part of their community. How do they learn who you are? It's through the essay. And the supplement, as Ms. Keogh was saying before, is a way for a college to know that you know more about the college, then it's great. So a supplement is not something, we also call it the Why Us essay. Why Fordham? Why Notre Dame? Why Chicago? You have to be able to answer that question. And it can't be like, it's a great school. It's the top engineering program. It's got, I joke sometimes with the guys, I love trees and it's got so many trees. You have to be able to connect this to you. So it's very important that these supplements, and it's shorter. So sometimes it's like 200 words or 250 words or so. So it's about knowing why you want to be there and being able to articulate that in a short supplement. The activities resume. I call this quality versus quantity. Joining 15 clubs in senior year is not going to be impressive if that's the first time you're joining clubs. How have you grown through your clubs and activities, COVID aside? I'll get to COVID in a second. How have you grown or been involved with something over your time inside and outside of Fordham Prep? So it's not just what you've done at Fordham Prep. It's what you do outside of Fordham Prep. Maybe you're on a team at Fordham Prep and outside. I have many students who are on multiple basketball teams or hockey teams, or they do theater inside the school and they do theater outside the school. But also it's important to note that sometimes students can't be involved in an activity. This is important for us to know. maybe there's significant home responsibilities for that student. Maybe, especially in the age of this pandemic, they had to pick up more responsibility because their parent or guardian had to go work, and they had to help their siblings get onto Zoom and learn how to engage like this in a classroom before they even got to their own stuff. That's a true narrative. But what does that show? Resilience, perseverance, leadership, all the stuff they're also looking for in the activities. So some people say, like, I haven't been able to be involved in anything. Is that going to hurt me? Well, tell me about yourself. Tell me what you do outside of school. Tell me your responsibilities outside. Have you ever had a job? Have you ever had an internship? Where are you in terms of chores at home? So all of that is important. I'm one of those believers, you throw everything against the wall and you see what sticks. So talk to your counselor, because the other place that can be explained is in the counselor letter of recommendation, which leads me into letters of recommendation. So we will write a letter of recommendation for everybody on our caseload. It's more holistic. It's about academics, but it's also about personal. It's also about the activities, as I was mentioned, who they are, and their impact on the community. So it's a more holistic letter. The teacher letters of recommendation are about them as a student. Mr. Tejeda mentioned this at the beginning, where he said some schools may be quite specific. Georgetown, I know we keep mentioning Georgetown, but Georgetown this year has created specific letters they want for specific schools. So that would be on their website. But if you're applying to the business program, they want junior or senior teacher in math or history. So it's important that you do kind of look at that. That's not the case for most schools. Most schools just want one or two teachers, typically junior year. Sophomore year, we're good with two, but don't go back to freshman year unless you've had that teacher again. Choosing your freshman year teacher, you've grown as a student, you've grown as a person. So you want to make sure that you're choosing people who not only can articulate who you are as a person, but who you are in the classroom, because that's where we're going. So the other piece of advice I give is choose somebody who likes you. You don't get to see these letters. So you have to feel confident that the person that you choose or the people that you choose will write well on your behalf. That doesn't always mean the A. Some people say, oh, I only have to choose the course where I got the A. That may not be the case. Maybe you started off slow and grew throughout the year, and you worked with that teacher and you were at consultation and you started over the summer. You started slow, but through your growth and through getting your nose in the book, you've grown. That is a story of growth in a classroom environment. So really think about who you are going to ask. We don't typically do this until late March, early April anyway. So we have time, because right now we're talking about it's November. How can I choose a junior year teacher? They don't know me, I don't know them. That's 100% accurate. So build that relationship, forge that relationship, and just work toward keeping your nose in the book, work on your academics, because as we said earlier with the transcript, it's important that these courses show your growth. The other thing I just want to quickly mention about the sophomore teacher. What if I'm going to have that teacher again in senior year? If that's the case, that's fine too, because when these letters are due, it's typically around now, November 1st. So you still have a few weeks in senior year to show that continued growth, but that's a small time. So consider this as we're doing, consider major. I often say, how can I hold a 17-year-old young man down to a major choice when I changed my major in college 3 times? When we talk about course selections and we talk about letters of recommendation and we talk about building your list, we're always talking about anticipated major. What are you considering? Even if you change your mind. And if you don't know, well, what do you like? Are you more of a math student, or do you like reading? And that's how we start to figure out who is the best person, not only for your letter of recommendation, but also the courses for next year in terms of your trajectory versus interest. So the elements of the application, who is responsible for what, we're going to go over this again next year, but sometimes it's good just to have this information in your back pocket now. So we send out your transcript, we send out your letters of recommendation, we do the advocating, and we do the supporting documents. So those are like the school profile. So the school profile is basically a 3-page document that explains what Fordham Prep is. So our mission, our COVID response, our average scores on SAT and ACT, and all the courses that we offer at Fordham Prep. So they look at that alongside the transcript. So they see, wow, they offered 20 AP courses. He was involved with 7. He was involved with 2, but his trajectory allowed him to hit 2. That's great. So they're watching that, and so those are some of the documents that we send out. The family is responsible for the application and submitting the application. We help. We get you there. We will walk you to the line, but it's important that you own this process and that you are applying to the schools that you want to apply to. I'll never forget one of my second years in this, in college counseling at Fordham Prep. I got a call from a school saying that I didn't submit the materials. Now, it was not requested. I know Mr. Tejeda spoke about that earlier about requesting. So if it doesn't show to me, materials don't go out. So it was never requested. So when I found the student's like, I never applied to Buffalo. I don't know what you're talking about. So I called home, and the mother's response was, oh, I applied. I just threw it out there for him. That shouldn't happen, right? This should be a joint process. So gentlemen, hear me as well. You have to open up this conversation to your family as well. This is a process where we all work together. Counselor, family, student, we all have to work together on building that list. I know you're hearing me when I say, and you're using that when I say this is your process, but open up, take the assistance from everybody. But it's your job to hit submit and to fill out those applications. Take the tests, write those essays. We will work with you on those essays, as I mentioned, and the supplements. Demonstrate interest and interview. Some schools do interview. Fordham does, Lemoyne does, Holy Cross does, at the prep. Outside of that, if there are interviews offered by the school, just look at the school's websites. I always say, go to the school website first. They control their own website. So any of the most up-to-date information will always be controlled by them. So go to the school's website. You can see all of their requirements and what they do and don't do. This includes campus visits. So if, are they open for COVID reasons at this point? Most schools seem to be heading that way, which is great, but they have virtual tours as well. So really get onto those sites and take a look. And then Mr. Tejeda said this, we had 145 individual schools by the end of this month attend Fordham Prep for our students individually. I say that because, some schools do fairs. We can't do that because of COVID restrictions, who's allowed on the campus because we're on the university campus, space at the prep, how many students and people can be in the prep. We would have loved to have this event live, but because there's 255 juniors, plus a parent or guardian, we're upwards of 500 plus people in the theater, and we can't do that. So what do we do? And this is longstanding. We bring the rep to us. And 9 times out of 10, that rep is the person who will read their application, who will be evaluating their application. And you're in the room. You're in the room with those people. So this, in my opinion, is fantastic. And it's only grown. 145 different schools have been here or will be here by the end of this month. And that's one-on-one. That's not shoved at a table and somebody else is asking a question or listening to your story. This is the rep talking about their school and taking questions from the students. They're not interviews, they're info sessions, but they open up into discussions. And if you can put a face to an application, in my opinion, that's excellent. And then colleges, they make those decisions. So that's outside of our work. We don't get students into colleges. We get you there, right? So the college has to make that call. And to be honest, the college also doesn't know what's coming in that year. So I'll give you one quick example. I had a student apply to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI. He applied, in my opinion, he should have gotten in. So when I called the rep said, oh, he applied mechanical. This year, mechanical was our toughest. Had he applied last year, he would have gotten in. Or had he applied electrical engineering, he would have gotten in. Would have gotten in means he didn't know either. So stuff like this does happen, but just know that we're working alongside you and working with you to put forward the best narrative and the best version of you through all of your writing and through your application. So this is what leads us right to here. We got to work together on this. So the students will do a reflection this year in counseling. We require this, so they don't get out of junior year without completing this reflection. It's pretty long. Sorry, guys, but help us, help you. This is the way I frame this. Help us, help you. Telling, if there's a question, are you involved in any sports or clubs? Yes, and then you move on. Doesn't help me. You got to tell me what it is. You got to tell me your leadership. You got to tell me, maybe you were cut sophomore year and you tried out and you worked out and you went to the gym and you played outside and you came back and made the team. This is all important. This is narrative. So it tells us who you are and it tells us where we can go with that. And then the parent reflection. Parents, you have not received this reflection yet. So don't think you've missed something. We will send that out to you. So the parent reflection, though, is important because, as I just said, sometimes they're not as forthcoming with information. I know you're surprised. I know that, I don't know who he's talking about, but parent reflections are important. The parent reflection, I don't care if you tell me every award he has received since he was 4. So I'll just say he was highly decorated and I'll move on. But you can give me insight. You can give me a story that I may not know or he may not have thought was important to tell me. So the parent reflection, there's a great question on there. It says, if you could write the first paragraph of the college counselor letter of recommendation, what would you write? Great question. So these are some of the questions we'll ask. We will start dialogue, these conversations and these conferences with you in January, second semester. So we're still working with the seniors. We had 85% of the class apply on 11/1. So that was a big rush, but we still have more applications that need to go out. We pick up the juniors in January. So we will start those conversations in second semester. And it's an online system to book an appointment with us. The same way they book is the same way the parents book. And you can choose 20-minute appointments, 40-minute appointments. You can choose in person, so you can come to Fordham Prep to our office and have an actual appointment in-house, or you can do them virtually through Zoom, or both. I've had situations this year where I had a parent or guardian in front of me, I had the student next to me, and I had a different parent or guardian at home on Zoom, or the parents were on Zoom and the student was next to me. Doesn't matter. As long as the conversation is happening, we will make it happen. I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of things here. So student athletes, recruitment and participation, a lot of this happens outside of our office. Typically, we're not much involved with this process unless it's like I need a transcript to send to that coach. Most of this is coach, student, or coach to coach at the university. D1, D2, you have to register for the NCAA Eligibility Center. You have to be on that. If you're not cleared by the Eligibility Center, you're not going to be able to walk on the field or jump in the pool or whatever. Most of our courses, and what that is, they're also looking at your transcript and seeing if you're eligible. And most of our courses, if not all of them, are cleared. So, but we have to get you into the system in order to do that. So look on the college websites for the coach's contact information and reach out. Again, this is your process. Reach out, speak to your coaches here, football, baseball, talk to Coach Dean, talk to Coach Hemsley, talk to Mr. Febla, talk to Mr. Carney, Mr. Galimi, talk to Mr. Curtin, but work with your coaches. And if you work on a more competitive, if you play for a more competitive team on the outside, like a club team, and they're your point of contact, initiate that conversation now. I don't think it's ever too early to start this conversation. So please move on that process. club sports, intramural sports, most of that stuff will happen once you get there. There are so many things. I think at Cornell, they even have like a Quidditch club team. They're just running around on a field on a broom with a ball. I don't know, but I'm not getting involved, but you can, and you'll learn all of that stuff when you're on the campus. Paying for college, the fun stuff of this evening. I promise I'll move quickly. Net price calculator. Every college, by law, has to have what's called the net price calculator on their website. Now, some colleges are forthcoming, and it's right there on their financial aid page. Some schools will be funny and hide it. So what I always say is go to the website, click on that little magnifying or search thing up in the top right corner and type net price calculator, or Google it, Fordham University net price calculator, and it will bring you there. And what it does is, the aim of it is to help you, to help your family know what the estimate will be next year, or when you go to college, I should say. It's not 100%, it's not a guarantee, it's an estimate, but it's pretty close. So you're putting in your financial information. They'll probably ask you some information about grades, but you're getting an estimate. And that's where you start to see, like, oh, we're going to get gapped by a certain amount of money, or yeah, we actually can handle this. So net price calculator, very important. The FAFSA and the CSS profile. The first letter of FAFSA, F, free, which means don't pay for it. The CSS profile, you do have to pay. I'll get there in a second. But the FAFSA is free. So this is required by all the colleges if you're looking for financial aid. It's federal government funds. It opens October 1st of 2022. And they use what's referred to as prior year taxes. So they're considering for you, when you apply, the 2021 taxes. They'll be done, right? So you can start this process. But when you're filling out these forms, and they could be cumbersome, a lot of times I'll get the question, you know, should my son be involved in this process? My answer is yes. Some parents don't like that answer, but according to the college, if they request to see their financial stuff, they have to give it to them. But it's also good for them to know what it looks like in terms of output and what it looks like in terms of investing in that education. So the FAFSA has to go out there. Some schools will actually say, in order to be considered for scholarship, that you have to submit a FAFSA. How do I know which one it is? Go to their websites. Their websites are very detailed, especially when it comes to money. So go to their websites, and on their websites, you can see exactly what they require. Some schools additionally want the CSS profile. The CSS profile is college's institutional funds, which means they're going to want more information. A little more invasive with their questions. It's not required by every school. It's on the College Board website. So you can see the list of schools that will require it. There is a fee to do this. So the first, it's a $25 registration fee, and then $16 per school to do this. But check the deadlines with the colleges. For example, I can give you, for Fordham, they want a lot of their stuff by November 15th, even though their deadline was November 1st. They give like that 2-week window. So check with the schools. And just in case, like, you're blocking this out right now, I don't want to talk about finances at the moment. We offer a financial aid night, which I highly recommend every year. It's very in-depth. Some of you may have gone to it this year. It was great. But this year we also piloted a FAFSA workshop, which went over very well, where we allow you to bring all of that information that they need. And I'll tell you what it is right before we lead up to it. But you bring that information to this workshop, and we have 3 representatives from different colleges there from the financial aid office who will walk you through every step on that FAFSA. And we'll make sure that you're answering the questions correctly and submitting it to the colleges. So we'll talk more about this, especially in financial aid night, and more in depth as it relates to you and your sons. But these are the 2 most important forms. You know, grants, loans. So grant, give, right? GG, I'm giving you this. Loans, lend, L. So, there's federal loans and there's Pell and there's for the grants and there's all this. There's a lot that goes into financial aid. And again, we'll break that down. But work study is also an interesting scenario where a student will work on the campus in admissions. He can work in the bursar's office. And what they're looking at that is you're working for us, we'll pay you. And the idea is that it's going toward the tuition. Can you appeal a financial decision? Yes, especially now with COVID and everything that's going on. So you get the financial package, you submitted everything, you're proud of yourself, you submitted the FAFSA, the CSS profile, you get your student aid report. And in that, the colleges start discerning over what we can do for the prospective family. When you get that report from let's say you get accepted and here's your financial package. Can you appeal that number? Oh, listen, we're off by $10,000. If that $10,000 was there, we can probably do it. Then you contact the school. I'm just giving a ballpark number here, like a random number. You can work with us on that conversation. But you can absolutely appeal to a college and give them more information. And what they're going to want to know is more information. So work with the schools, work with us, and we'll walk you through this process. But finances is definitely part of the discussion. I always tell the guys, you should have financial safety schools on your list as well. We spoke about reach target safety in terms of academics, but also financial safety schools as well. And then the other thing I often say is finances shouldn't be a reason not to apply to a school, but an understanding of what that net price calculator says is important. An understanding of what we can do as a family is important discussion. Fee waivers. I often say that not being able to pay for a test or not being able to pay for an application is not a reason to not apply to college. We can get you fee waivers for the SATs, we've even, for the ACT, for applications, students who qualify for free or reduced lunch would also fall under this, but reach out to us. If you need help or if there's a reason why you need a fee waiver, just reach out to the college counseling office, and fee waivers are granted all the time. So please reach out to us if that is something that you need, but it's definitely not a reason why you would not apply to school. Scholarships, merit-based aid, right? So need-based aid is based on the money. Merit-based aid is usually based on your academics, your testing, your something you could bring to the school, so athletics or talent that you can bring there. Some schools actually, like I said, may require the FAFSA to do this, but it's awarded through the admissions process. So it's from the school. Every school has their scholarships listed there. Some schools, some Jesuit colleges actually offer a scholarship for students who come from a Jesuit high school. So all of this information would be on their websites. And that's something that we can navigate with you. But scholarship money from the institution is usually based merit. And then there's outside programs and opportunity programs. So if you're looking for outside scholarships, there's scholarships out there for everything. Left-handed people, redheads, you name it, there's a scholarship out there. Fastweb.com. So it's right there. And again, all these slides will be turned over to you, so you will have access to all of this. Fastweb.com will list tons of different scholarships out there. If we hear of some, we will communicate that. The Mothers Club has a scholarship. There's another scholarship called the Chow Scholarship. If we hear about the Enrico Fermi Scholarship, if we hear about a scholarship, we will funnel that information out. And it's usually through our announcements. College Board, Going Merry, there's also an app. These are different platforms that you can use to look up scholarship opportunities. And then there's opportunity programs. Questbridge, Posse, Gates Scholarship. These are opportunity programs that are offered that are not only academic, so that can help you if you get Questbridge or Posse, you're part of a group of students It's usually based on income and ability. Each one of those have a website. And when I turn over the recording of this, I'm also going to turn over, like I said, all of the PowerPoints, but I'm also going to list all the resources that are mentioned in this presentation. So I'll list the link to QuestBridge and to Posse and to Gates and FastWeb, just so you have it all in one place. So these are just opportunities out there that you can look for to help finance college. And then HEOP, EOP, and SEEK. So HEOP are some private schools. It's a higher education opportunity program. Again, it's based on academic disadvantage and financial disadvantage. So financial disadvantage is based on the income for the year, as well as the number of people living in the household. And there's a whole grid for that. So we would look at that, as well as academic disadvantage. And students get confused with that because how can I be academically disadvantaged? I go to Fordham Prep. What they mean by that is admissions. So a 4.1 will get into Fordham. Fordham has HEOP, but I meet the financial, right? But you're not academically disadvantaged because you'll get in. A 3.9 is not going to get into Columbia. You meet both. This is an opportunity potentially there. So a lot of people put forward for it, so it is competitive, but there are programs out there, and I'll list that for you and all the corresponding colleges that come with it. EOP is for the SUNY system, and SEEK, sometimes referred to as College Discovery, is for the CUNY system. So there are opportunities financially in all of these different types of schools, but I'll show it to you. We'll submit it to you so you can see it. We're wrapping up here. What should we be doing now? Ask questions, challenge yourself, do well academically. Do not be afraid to go to consultation and develop those weaknesses into strengths and to build that GPA. Your GPA is locked at the end of this year for the college process. So this is when we gotta work to the end, basically. So participate in class, get that teacher to know you, especially if you're asking them to write your letter, and get to know them. Get involved if you can. Again, we're in the age of COVID, and I'm going to come back to that. Actually, I'm going to say it right now. In the Common App, there is a question that says, did COVID affect you and your family? You can answer that any way you want. Some people are like, oh, I think they're only asking about if somebody in my family got it. Well, no. Maybe you couldn't play sports for 2 years, and you were trying to build up your reel or whatever for your tape for a coach, or maybe you had to take more home responsibilities because of it. So that COVID question in the Common App becomes important, but it relates right back to this. If you now can have the opportunity to get involved with those activities, and that doesn't mean just like I'm doing the Simpsons Club, I'm in the play, and I'm on the football team. That's all great. You're kind of in all the areas there, but it could also be community service. It could be a job, it could be babysitting. It could be part of your church. You're an altar server. Just get involved. Do something outside of academics. This also includes like summer enrichment programs. So there's a lot of students do the Gabelli Business Insider, for example, at Fordham University. Some people do that at Georgetown. So there are different academic programs out there as well over the summer, besides just jobs and internships, that you can get involved in. And it brings, Tennessee is back, for example. So these are the different things that you can do. So summer courses, paid employment, standardized test prep, and writing that Common App essay is going to be important. I'm not going to go into this. This kind of goes back to the start where there was that big arrow that Mr. Tejeda was talking about with the timeline. This is just a little more direct and a little more laid out in terms of what you can and should be doing. And some of the more important college deadlines on the bottom are also there. But plan ahead. I often tell the guys that, you are in control of this process. Do not let this process control you. If you work on this a little bit at a time, you'll be fine. If we wait till Halloween to apply on the 1st of November, you lend yourself to error because you're rushing. So work with us and we'll work with you. Quickly about the list, something I said to the seniors this year, and I'm going to say it now, is that building that list is important. Building that list and showing a wide variety of schools is important. So reach target safety means nothing if you don't like the schools. Don't put a school on your list because Mr. O'Sullivan or Mrs. Keogh, Mr. Tejeda said, I need a safety. I said this to the seniors. You shouldn't settle for a college. You should settle in that college. So you should like every school on that list. Nobody's going to like their top choice as much as their last choice. I get it. But you should be connected some way to these schools. I'm old school. I'm write things down on a piece of paper. I'm, create a chart and do like pro con list, because if you can't articulate it, how are you connecting to it? So it's very important that you lay this out. I know people who have spreadsheets for spreadsheets on this kind of stuff. Some parents come in and they like unfold like a ledger that just falls to the ground of everything in there that wants to, for every school. I'm impressed. But that's not your job. Your job is to work with us to build that list and to find what connects you to it. Lastly, this is it. Very important announcement. We are moving away from Naviance. So many of you probably know Naviance. If this is your first time going through this process, maybe you don't. But the seniors will be the last class to use Naviance for the college process. We are starting with a new program called Maya. Maya Learning is what it's called. We are currently in the onboarding phase of this, which basically means we're pulling all of our data from all the past years and from Naviance and putting it into Maya. So you will have the search engines. You will have the scattergrams that have all the past student data who've applied to those schools as it compares to you. So we're not losing any of that stuff. We're just switching platforms. And there's some great stuff on this within this platform as well. There's data, there's recommendations for student success on here. There's ways for us to streamline this process a little easier, as well as virtual events that come through here. But for the student perspective, there's also a strength survey and career opportunity surveys, and able to research different careers within this platform and to explore different universities within this platform, different search engines, etc. So sometimes some of you may be wondering, how come we didn't turn over the Naviance information to the parents yet? We're onboarding Maya, and rather than confused by offering two different platforms and which one are they using, and then all of a sudden it goes off, once we get everybody loaded in, which will be before we take over the students in class. We have a meeting on Friday, for example, with them, our whole department. So we're in the process of onboarding now, and then data transfer will happen simultaneously, but we are moving to Maya. So starting in January, the junior class, you guys will be the first rising senior class to use Maya in this process. Many schools do transfer off of different platforms. I know other schools that move from Naviance to Score or whatever. This is our platform, and we're excited about it. And we're working quickly to get you onto this process. So I'm going to end with two quotes from two NACAC, so the National Association of College Admissions Counseling. Don't spend time and energy worrying about what you can't control, like admit rates. Spend your energy on what you can control, like thriving in your classes and creating a compelling narrative for your college application. That's what you can control. And lastly, college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. This is about fit. This is about finding out who you are and who you are there. And when you get there, developing into the person that you will be throughout. So that is where I'm going to stop this formal process. Now, I do see there's a bunch of things going on in the chat right now. I'm not certain if there are questions or not. I know people are raising hands. we are not accepting questions live like that. So if you have a question, put your question into the Q&A. If you put the question into the Q&A, we can answer it live or we can answer it for you directly. But this is the end of the formal presentation, and we will stay on here and answer questions. Otherwise, like I said, we will be picking your sons up, guys will be picking you up in class in January. We want you to continue to do well. Quarter one just ended. Use quarter two to continue that momentum. And then we start with you, college counseling, right in January at the start of the second semester, where we will walk you to the end of this process. And I want to reiterate, happy first generation student. I myself I am a first gen student. So happy first generation student day. Congratulations. We will have a first gen night in December, I believe, where we go into this process again for first generation students. And in February, we will have a Fordham University night with their deans, where we'll have the dean of the Gabelli School of Business, so Dean Rapiccioli and Dean Parmack of their liberal arts, as well as Patty Peak, the director of admissions over there. And each one of them will be able to talk about their schools within the broader university. So we're excited about that. So one last thing, I'm sorry, Ms. Kia, I just want to say, something I mentioned to the juniors at the outset of the year is if they are free during a college visit now, and I think we still have at least 30 or so left, they are invited to go. They just can't miss class for them. But again, 145 came this year, so they'll have access to that next year as well. Ms. Kia, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say in the Q&A, someone asked a question about Maya and is it new? It is not new. Maya's been around for a number of years and a lot of schools have been using it. For a long time, Naviance served our needs and we were happy with it. In recent years, they've made a lot of changes and they've also upped their price a lot. So we started looking for other options, and a lot of people spoke very highly of Maya. So we're going for it. Someone also asked about college visits at Fordham this fall, and those have been going on for the whole semester so far, the whole quarter. They started in September, the second week of school, and they are still happening. And those colleges that are visiting are listed in the announcements every day. So the kids are getting that in their announcements. And then when will these slides be available?
Good question. So it's really not when the slides will be available. It is when the video is rendered and ready to be sent out. So the slides are ready. I mean, I can technically send out the slides tonight. So, but I want to send this all together. I had mentioned earlier that I would be using the resources mentioned here. So we're compiling all the resources. We have data on the CUNY schools. We have data on the SUNY schools that are going to be part of that. We have data on the Excelsior Scholarship, which is within the SUNY system, you know, and what that means. And it's based on a $125,000 threshold. And, you know, I didn't want to get into all that nitty gritty tonight, but I will give you access to that information. I'll give you access to HEOP and SEEK and EOP. With SEEK and EOP is within the CUNY and SUNY pages. So FastWeb for the scholarship sites. I want to compile this all into one document to be sent to you. So you'll always have access to it in this one document and it's not all over the place. Hopefully by the end of the week is my long way of saying, answering this question. You'll get it, I promise.
One of the next questions had to do with the activities resume. Apparently there's someone who has two boys in the school at the same time. Is it okay for them to work on a project together for service? And absolutely, yes, they will have their own unique resumes, but they can both list the same activity. That's absolutely fine. And then there was a question about the military. And so the process is not quite the same if your son is going to enlist in the military. That's actually kind of easy to do. But if your son wants to enroll in a military academy, the academies are a little bit more nuanced. There's like a two-step process for applying to like the United States Naval Academy or the United States Military Academy at West Point, or the United States Academy, Air Force Academy in Colorado. And there's also a Coast Guard Academy and a Merchant Marine Academy. Those are all federal programs. And so they begin with a nomination from your congressperson or a senator. And so that is something that we could walk you through in late summer, early fall, to start with the nomination process and then work you through the application. Because neither the nomination nor the application to the academy is going to be on the Common App. Those are going to be separate applications, and they're going to have a few more steps to them than the typical college application. I hope that answered that question.
That would be an example of another application separate from the Common App, for example. So go to their websites to see what their process is and their timeline.
There's actually a third thing that a student could consider when it comes to the military. So I initially mentioned enlisting, which not many of our students do, although occasionally they will. More often they would apply to one of the academies, but the third option is applying to the Reserve Officer Training Corps, which is a leadership program that students do while they're in college. And if a student were to choose that route, they would apply to college like we've been describing, and then they could enroll in this ROTC program, which would train them and prepare them for service right after college. And the advantage to that is that they will have a career immediately after college. They'll have a job right after college, that they will enroll or enlist as officers as opposed to enlisted men. And so there's a higher rank, higher pay for that. And then it's a tremendous leadership program, and that is only going to serve their resume very well when they're applying for jobs out after, if they go back to civilian life, or if they continue in the military. That's perfectly fine and up to them.
Two other things I wanted to mention. I know Mr. Tejeda had mentioned this at the beginning. Your college counselor has been assigned. So I think Power School has been shut down for you guys while the grades are being calculated, but since the report cards go live tomorrow, you will see your college counselor listed in your Power School account. So up where your school counselor is listed and your mentor, your college counselor will also be there. It's also in your Naviance account. Now, I know I said that we're getting rid of it and you shouldn't use it. However, you do have access to Naviance still, gentlemen, because you guys started that last year, I believe in sophomore year is when you created that account. So if you do have access to the account and you go into your Naviance account for now, until we shut it down, your college counselor is listed there as well. And then I just want to quickly touch on Prepare one more time. So Prepare is the in-house test prep program. That shut down because of COVID. So when we went into quarantine, it shut down. And then last year with the hybrid model, it was a lot to get that back up and going. There is active work being done right now to get that going in the spring semester. So just so you're aware, that does not come out of the college counseling office, but it benefits the college counseling office. So we are working with Dr. Petriello to get this momentum behind it for the spring semester. So just once we hear about it, it will most likely come out of either the moderators of it or Dr. Petriello's office. So once we know and we can solidify it, we will let you know all about it.
Someone asked about setting up appointments.
So it says, in terms of family appointments with college counselors, we can set that up anytime after January, correct? That is correct. So what we're asking is that second semester. So when we pick up the juniors, we pick up the whole family. So, I mean, look, if you have a quick question you need clarification on, sometimes I've even had school counselors walk, now we're all in one spot in the counseling center, so it's easier. But I've had Mr. Palumbi come into my office or Ms. Porter and just ask a quick question. But when we say that we pick up in January, we do the course selections for next year. And the reason why the college counselors do it is because not only are we looking based on your interest, but we're looking at it based almost like a college representative would, a college admissions counselor would. So what is this saying about your trajectory? What is this saying about potential major? What is this saying about who you are as a student and your interests? So we handle that now. But your school counselor remains with you through graduation. So any sort of social, emotional, personal, that, and even academic, that works through your school counselor. We are college and we do your course selections.
That being said, we are very collaborative. So we do work very closely with the school counselors. Just yesterday, I had a parent conference with the student and the school counselor, and all four of us were working on a plan together. So yeah, I just didn't want anyone to think that we're completely separate. We do everything very closely.
Yes. Oh, we're collaborative for sure.
Nobody falls through the cracks.
No. But if there are no other questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A. But we do thank you for being with us tonight. We try to move this as early as we can, because we know that this is important and that is on your mind. But just know that we are here for any questions, and we look forward to picking you up in January for sure. And we hope that we turned over a lot of information to at least get you thinking and moving in this process. But I will send out your this hopefully by Friday. So I know there are people raising hands, but again, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A. We really thank you, and thank you for your positive commentary. That's great. So have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.
Have a good night.